Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you. I am not Gautam Thapar, as you can see. Mr. Thapar, our chairman, his flight from London is just slightly delayed. He'll join us in a few minutes, but we didn't want to delay the program starting, and so here we go. My name, for those of you who don't know, is Kiran Pasricha. I'm the CEO of Aspen, India, your Indian host for this program. Convening this, our first, the Growth Net, together with our partners, Smadja and Smadja, and we have Claude here with us to welcome you. So many of you have traveled so far, and I see from Turkey, Thailand, Bangladesh, and I don't even want to start naming. So we have over nearly 90 speakers actually from 19 countries. And that's an amazing number for a first-time program. And we really appreciate all of you for coming as far as you have and to be with us on this first of our growth nets. As you will hear from others, this is a new beginning to start a dialogue between thought leaders from emerging economies. But we did not want to exclude participants and speakers from the developed world. So you will have speakers from both the developed and developing world, which is very, very meaningful for a good conversation to take this debate forward. Aspen India was set up in 2004, modeled on Aspen USA, and we have built our work in India focusing on international relationship, on leadership development, and on policy seminars. Those are our three main pillars. The 9-year journey has witnessed steady growth, and this is a new addition to our program. Our co-conveners are Smadja and Smadja, headed by Claude, who is a renowned and thoughtful writer and former managing director of the World Economic Forum. We are delighted to be able to work together, Claude, and we look forward to many more. I'm now going to hand you over to Claude, who will lead the brainstorming session and several other sessions over the next 48 hours. Claude, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiran. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my colleagues from Smadja and Smadja, and also on behalf of our friends from Aspen Institute India, it is really a pleasure to welcome you here. It is a pleasure, in addition to seeing so many faces of friends whom I have known for many years, it is a pleasure for two reasons. First of all, because we do believe that the structure, the face of a global economy has changed and will continue to change very rapidly in the coming years. And so far, there is no platform that really reflects this new reality of a global economy. And our ambition is to create this new platform and to make of this platform the landmark meeting for a group of emerging market economies which are reshaping the global economy. And we think the time is now, the opportunity is now, the need is now. And also, it is a very special moment for us, for me, I would say even from an emotional point of view, because this is an incredible opportunity to work with very dear, very close friends. I mean Tarun Das, Kiran Pasricha, who have been friends, mentors to me over the last, I would say, my God, I cannot even count, since 1987, to be very precise. And we feel that this is really a privilege for us at Smadja and Smadja to be associated with Tarun and Kiran, to be associated with the Aspen Institute India for this endeavor, for this long-haul project. And believe me, trust me, between Aspen Institute and Smadja, over the next few years, we are going to bring this meeting to an astonishing level. So, a warm, most heartfelt welcome to all of you, and our thanks for being with us. This is a new brand. This is a new event. You don't know what it is. You have taken your bets and you have joined us. My only regret is for all the many people, speakers and participants, who had confirmed to be with us and for different reasons, whether it is the longer duration of the National People's Congress in China or the rough elections in Kenya, or some bureaucratic hassles and time hassles in visa, who could not be with us, but they will be with us in the coming years. Let me now turn to the first topic of our agenda. You have seen in the program issue identification session. What does it mean? It means that you are going to work. So this is the bad news for you. We are going to make you work. But before you work, let me, in a way, try to think aloud with you to get you started in your thinking process around the tables. As I mentioned, this is a very decisive moment in the global economy. A number of emerging market countries have now reached a tipping point. They have been enjoying growth rates which are reasonably high for a number of years. They have been developing business, economic, trade, financial connections over the last 5, 7, 10 years, so that in a way, a critical mass has been achieved to create an economic momentum. And this economic momentum is fed by demographic realities, is fed by the fast-moving process of urbanization in all of these countries that we will be talking about. And so it is a decisive moment. And these countries, what is happening is something very important. These countries, and it all started with China's and India's hunger for raw materials, commodities, natural resources, and then this expanded into a lot of other sectors. It all started with state-owned companies, and then it developed with a number of private companies joining in this momentum. And as I said, all these countries, they are more and more interacting among each other. They are doing more and more business. They are transacting more and more. They are, in a way, creating this new environment that I would call the new constellation of growth in the global economy. And do you know what got us thinking, Tarundas and myself? It was a reflection that I heard in the office of one very well-known business leader, Indian business leader. And we were talking about Europe. And in a way, he dismissed my point, and he said, look, Claude, today there is not a single Indian corporation worth its name which doesn't have a Latin America and an Africa strategy. In a way, he was expressing in business terms the whole concept of this new constellation of growth. And just look at the dynamics. What is happening is these countries, as I said, are transacting among each other, and less they are going through London, New York, Frankfurt, Paris. They are doing it among themselves. Trade among these countries is increasing at a rate of 20% average a year. And so you remember, we have been talking for years about South-South trade. But let us be frank, it was more a figure of rhetoric, it was wishful thinking, but this has become a reality now. And so what you see also is the emergence of a new geography of wealth. Why? In that respect, the crisis of 2008 was a major turning point. I mean the crisis in the US and Europe. Why was it a major turning point? Because in a way, and again, I will be very blunt, it marked the closing chapter of the era of the Western world prominence on the global economy. What did we see in 2008? What did emerging market countries see in 2008? They saw that the West had not the solution to every problem. They saw that in some cases, they were able to manage even better than Western countries. And more importantly, it highlighted a new process. Let me give you just a few examples. If you look at the situation today, national debt, public debt to GDP ratio has increased for France to 93% of GDP. For Germany, 89%. For the US, 100%. For Italy, 126%. For Japan, 225%. At the same time, between 2008 and 2013, the debt to GDP ratio for emerging market economy has either remained stable or has even declined, with the slight exception of India, where it has increased from 66 to 71% of GDP, but the government is now very clear and committed to bring that down. So you have one element which is showing how the geography of wealth is changing. Let me give you another element. In 2010, the US had 25.3% of the world global output. Europe had close to 25%. By 2020, the US will have only 15.5% of the global output. And France will be at only 14.5%. At the same time, the share of India and China combined will have gone altogether from about 18% of world global output to 26% of the world global output. And so we see how this is evolving. Let me just give you another example, and then I will let you get away with numbers. According to the IMF, in 1990, emerging market economies represented 20% of the world GDP. 20%, 1990. 2010, they represent 30%. So in a way, it took 20 years to gain 10 points of percentage. 2015, they will represent, according to the IMF, 40%. So it will take them only 5 years to get another 10 percentage point compared to the 20 years it took them before to take 10 points, which shows the dynamics which are at play. And these dynamics are propelled by something very important, which, in my view, is the key development in the global economic landscape, which, in my view, is the real game changer in the global economic landscape. It is the emergence of the new multinationals from emerging market countries. And we have many representatives of these multinationals with us for the inaugural meeting of the GrowthNet. These new multinationals are very agile, they are very dynamic, they are very flexible, they have a lot of cash, and even more important, they have been trained to operate in very rough economic terrain, their countries of origin. And so they are beginning to eat the lunch of the established multinational. They are changing the face of the global competition game. And they are the ones driving these dynamics. And this dynamics is not only affecting Asia or Latin America. Talk about Africa, which was considered to be the lost continent. Africa today, in 2012 to be precise, enjoyed $46 billion of foreign direct investment. 10 years before, the figure for foreign direct investment for the whole African continent was a little bit below $15 billion. So it has tripled in the last 10 years. And to see Africa with all its difficulties, and we have seen what is happening in Mali, for instance, being able to attract this kind of investment attention, to generate the kind of new dynamics which are at play in the other parts of the world, I think is a good testimony that this dynamic is very broad and is beginning to be very deep. Now, you will tell me, is it the moment to pop up the champagne or to toast the Mao Tai? I don't think so. Because, of course, there are reasons for optimism, but there are a number of issues and challenges on which we would like you to work in the next 5 minutes as soon as I have finished. What are these issues and challenges? I'm not going to enumerate them because we would like you to think about them. But let me, in a way, to get you started, put them into three baskets. First basket of issues, economic policies, their relevance, their scope, their pace. You know, the era when a country could compare itself to where it is now, to where it was 5 years ago, and give itself a kind of nice tap on the shoulder. This era is over. Competition for investment attraction has become beyond ruthless. We know that financial flows are very versatile, and so you have to be on your toes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to try to keep the investor's attention, whether it is on FDI or institutional funds. And in that respect, the question is, are economic reform going fast enough in this group of emerging market economies? To what extent are these market economies, the emerging market economy, devoting enough attention, having the right policies, being able to mobilize and allocate the resources to confront their infrastructure challenge? Let us be very clear. Maybe with the exception of China, all these countries are left wanting in that respect. Look at financial markets. All these countries face the tremendous, even China, even more China, face the tremendous challenge of deepening and diversifying their financial markets, have the challenge to be able not only to attract funds, but to allocate them in an efficient way, because there is a lot of waste there at the moment, a lot of unused resources. Let us consider what is happening with corporate governance. In all these countries, all emerging market economies, without any exception, corporate governance remains, let us use a nice word, very fuzzy. And so, of course, it is a big obstacle. So you have this basket of economic policies to be put in place, not only to be put in place, but to be pursued with the fortitude which is necessary today, because it is a race against time. Second basket of issues, political governance. We all know, in all these countries, corruption, fraud are a daily life reality. In all these markets, the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability create a permanent risk for investors. Of course, investors will decide to go despite the risk, because the rewards can be very high. But if the risks were lessened, they would go even broader and deeper into their involvement. In all these emerging market countries, we see, in a way, national expectations betrayed by the political system, a political system which in most of these countries remain very fragmented, remain driven by personal interest and calculation instead of being driven by the decision to really do what is good for the national interest. And let me go now to the third basket of issues. Societal and social issues. In all these countries, despite the high growth rate, job creation is not going fast enough to absorb the new entrants in the job markets. In all these countries, there is a fledgling middle class, and this fledgling middle class is moving fast, has its expectations moving very high and very fast, and doesn't see these expectations met by the political system. They, in a way, don't see the country keeping pace with their expectations. And you know what happens in this kind of situation? Of course, I'm not saying that what we saw in the Arab world, the Arab uprising, can be replicated or will be replicated in other parts of the world. But it illustrates a point which is absolutely crucial. You cannot anymore just look at GDP growth as the ultimate criteria. Egypt was growing at 6%. Tunisia was growing at between 6 and 7%, but this is where the uprising started. Why? Because despite the growth, or because of the growth, the wealth distribution gap was widening beyond control. I am not saying that the Arab uprising will find its way to China, but China now is beyond 0.5 on the Gini index. And you know the Gini index is, in a way, the calculator to assess the level of wealth distribution inequalities in a country. And all economic analysts and observers consider that when the Gini index gets to 0.5, the maximum is 1. When it gets to 0.5, you get into some kind of potentially explosive situation. And so, in a way, you have this element in all these countries of government not being able to adjust to fast changing and fast expanding expectations. And you can realize, again, not going to the extreme of the Arab uprising, how eruptions of social discontent can easily derail and bring a process of economic development backward almost overnight. So I will stop here because I just wanted to give you some elements that will help you start the conversations around the table. Now let me give you the rules of the game. What we would like you to do, first of all, is really to congregate around tables so that each table is full, so that you can have a meaningful discussion. This is point number one. Point number two, we would like to recommend that at each table you introduce yourselves so that you know who is around the table, and you decide by fiat, by an act of authority, who will be the table rapporteur. Then we would like you around each table to discuss over the next 25, 30 minutes about the issues that you see for the moment in emerging market economies, looking at your experience in your own countries or countries in which you operate. And when you can, maybe think about ways or countries where these issues have been addressed more or less successfully. When you have done your discussion, I will be calling tables, and I will ask the rapporteur at each table to summarize in 2-3 minutes the results of a discussion, the outcome of a discussion that will appear on these screens. And what we intend to do with that is not just a sadistic exercise to get you working on a Sunday afternoon. What we would like to do with that is two things. First of all, to get a number of elements that will help us feed the discussion and integrate into the agenda of a session over the next 2 years. And in a very, I would say, Machiavellic way, utilize your input to feed not only the program of this year, but to feed our thinking for the coming gross net meeting. So please, for the table who are not yet full, I would like to recommend that you don't be shy, you just move to tables where you see seats available. Then, as I said, I would recommend that you introduce yourself because it is easier to discuss with people. You know who they are, where they come from, and I will let you engage into your discussions over the next 30 minutes. I cannot promise that the best reporting table will win a car or something like that, but your reward will come tonight with a very nice dinners with some good drinks. So now I did my share, now it is time for you to work for the next 30 minutes.